All right. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for the patience, and thank you for joining us. This is our fourth live interview we're doing for Microsoft Teams Superheroes. I'm going to let our esteemed guest introduce himself in a second, but very excited for the one this week. We are going to hear from Telstra and what they are doing with our Power Platform and Microsoft Teams. I don't want to steal the show, though, so I'm going to turn this over, and as usual, we'll have a conversation and walk through the details here with Nathan. But Nathan, can you give the folks on the call a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, no problems, Jace. G'day, everyone. Yeah, my name's Nathan Backers, and I work for Telstra. I started here around 11 years ago as a trainee communications technician. It was my job to install and maintain customer services, do IP networking, things like that, but nothing. I came to Telstra with no formal IT or developer training. So a little bit about Telstra for those of you who don't know. We're Australia's leading telecommunications company. We service the entire country of Australia. And the team in specific that I work for is our field digitisation team, and that team's responsible for providing our thousands of technicians who service the entire continent of Australia with the tools to be able to automate and digitise as many of the complex processes and whatnot, so they can serve our customers, which is obviously what they're best at. So I'm based in Newcastle, which is a couple of hours north of Sydney, for those of you who don't know where that is. And yeah, it's been quite a journey, and obviously I can thank the Power Platform and Teams for where I've gone from our communications technician role into more of an IT focused role where we can solve real world problems for our frontline technicians.
I love that evolution of your role, man. It's so cool to see. One thing I'm going to ask you real quick on here. So what we try to do is cover a bit of the background on the challenge that you guys were having before we actually get into the solution. And one thing I love about your use case at Telstra is, as people start reading this as you go through it, while I think this is incredibly applicable to field workers or frontline workers, whatever your organization calls them, a lot of the things you'll talk about, frankly, are also things that most organizations on the planet struggle with, right? Microsoft included. And that's why I think your story is so powerful. And again, I don't want to steal your thunder here, Nathan, but yeah, maybe you could walk us through a little bit of the background on the challenge you guys were facing.
Yeah, sure. So like I mentioned before, we have thousands of highly skilled technicians who service the entire continent of Australia. And we have we do have 50 different links and systems and tools that a technician's required to access on a daily basis to remain compliant for a number of different processes, some which we don't have influence over, some which we have legal and regulatory implications. So we have to comply with those. So previously, what our technicians were doing is going to all of these different places to try and access these links. There'd be a plethora of bookmarks in their Google Chrome browser. So we thought about how we could sort of consolidate all of these tools and then introduce them into what was already in our digital ecosystem to best complement our existing tool set. And previously, before we started our field digitization move to consolidate all of these tools, we already had teams out there being used by our field technicians at scale. So we created Teams channels for all of our teams across the entire country. There's a quite diverse range of teams in the way they operate, depending on where they're located. We have some teams in the outback. We have some teams in the CBD in Sydney and Melbourne. So the dynamic and their needs are obviously different dependent on where they are located. So obviously we have a lot of those guys that are out in the outback and things like that who won't have mobile coverage at all times. And also our technicians were having to switch between their tablets in some cases for some processes. They have their laptops in for some processes. And in some cases, we still had paper web forms and stuff like that. So what we wanted to do is try and bring as much of this stuff into a mobile application, which our technicians can use and have that offline functionality to be able to access these tools in places where they didn't have mobile reception. So they could remain compliant and they could have that one central device, which is the same device which they receive their work on as well. So it's basically just reducing the amount of back and forth between their vans or their vehicles for our technicians to be able to fully complete their process and remain compliant.
It's awesome. I mean, summarizing there, what I hear, right, is I mean, you guys obviously have some nuanced challenges, you know, being Australia and what Telstra does as an organization, but it's still huge workforce, ton of systems, ton of different tools and applications, and that disparate challenge that I think we all face every day, where you end up spending a bunch of time just searching for the information you need just to get your job done, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just wanted to make it as simple as possible. Obviously, as I mentioned before, I've been in that role before. I can empathise with the challenges that our technicians can face on a day-to-day basis, and really just wanted to build a tool that, help those guys out as well. And I think that's one of the great advantages of the Power Platform and Teams, is that it offers people that don't necessarily have that background in the DevOps or software engineering roles to come in and solve real world problems. And what that means is that you can proactively go out and identify these opportunities to be able to digitize and automate a number of processes just based on your experience as well. So I think that's it's a real great homage to that tool, I suppose.
For sure, and you bring up a great point, which I'll wait, because I know we'll cover it later on your feedback and sort of advice to your peers. But really important point there in my mind that a lot of customers are asking us about, which is you don't officially sit in IT, right? And I mean, there's this really we get the same question over and over and over again, which is, hey, we love this idea of citizen developers, but how do we manage and support these solutions? So for those listening on the call, we will touch on that for sure here in a bit. But I think what would be great now, Nathan, if you'd be so kind, is share us what you guys ended up doing. How'd you end up going about solving this problem?
Yeah, so I guess all of this come about. We already had our Office 365 enterprise agreement in operation across our company. We rolled out Teams at scale for our field workers as well. But what we wanted to do is, as I mentioned before, is consolidate those tools and sort of make this as a central landing page for our technicians to go, where they can access all of these different tools and functionality. And what that does as well is it really redefines the way that we do our change and comms. Before, we would send out emails or notifications to our technicians, go here for this process, go here for that process. Now it's pretty much just go to Teams, check out what's in Teams, and you'll be able to find what you need there. So pretty much how this all started was a couple of years ago now. One of our senior leaders wanted to get some more visibility around some issues and opportunities which were facing our frontline technicians. So we created our first Power App, which is called Tide. And what Tide is to capture, or does, is to capture systematic process issues and opportunities. And we then feed them into our leadership to help drive improvement throughout the business, not just in field services, but we feed that upstream into the wider business as well. And the reason why we started using that technology was basically it was free to us as a business unit to use with no additional CapEx costs. So relatively cheap, and it was obviously quick for us to develop as well. And we used InfoPath and SharePoint Designer and things like that to automate several processes before. And the intuitive nature of those tools is what sort of led us the natural progression onto Power Apps and Teams and the Power Platform in general. So we had Tide out and about for about 6 months, and I guess from that point there, after we went through the MVP phases, we started to look at how we could mobilize new and existing tools and processes. So we obviously had a lot of great results since the introduction of Tide. So we developed several applications, but what we actually done is created our own challenge. We had up to a point where we had about 50 separate applications developed on Power Apps. When we needed to work out how we could consolidate these tools and then introduce them into our digital ecosystem to best complement the existing tool set. And that's where it comes into phase 3. And we developed this strategic Power App called Technician Plus, which is essentially our one-stop shop now for all this different functionality that we've built. And then we embedded them within those Teams channels, which were already being used across the business by our field technicians. And what that did is then make that the one central hub for our technicians to go on a day-to-day basis. And we sort of see around 1,000 users per day on that now out of our few thousand technicians that we have across our country. So yeah, I think
that's killer, right? So you essentially empowered your teams to go solve their own challenges, but you got to a point where we see many organizations getting as well, where you have a bunch of different separate solutions for separate use cases, right? And then it starts to compound the problem if you don't really bring it together. We're starting to see this trend now where, the last call we had is there was one bot to rule them all. And I almost see here is that you've got one key strategic Power App, as you phrased it, to rule all the others and make life easy. So it's fantastic. Could we bother you to show us and demo some of the great work you guys have done?
Yeah, for sure. That's no worries. So I'll just share my screen. So let me know when you can see that.
Pop it up once I get it. And gotcha.
So the first app I'll show you is Tide. So this is the very first Power App that we created in Field Services. And then I'll show you Technician Plus, which is what we've got embedded, which has Tide associated currently. But this is obviously our Teams channel. I've got this embedded within a Teams channel currently. So this is what we use to capture issues and opportunities directly from our field services technicians. And then we feed them into our leadership using Power Automate as well. And obviously it's all embedded within Teams. So we've had quite a few items submitted and for quite a few items closed since it's been in operation for almost 2 years now. So if we wanted to come in here and have a look at some of the items, we'll try to create this a little bit like a social media application. So we have, we call them hands up, but essentially they're similar to likes in Facebook. And as you can see, this one here has got 294 likes from around the business. People can come in and see what the last comment was, or a chronological order of all the comments that have been provided next to one item. And what that does is it really helps understand the scale of how far the issue is impacting. So if you can imagine somebody on the east coast of Australia submits an issue about a particular problem, and somebody on the west coast of Australia comes in and likes it and comments and says, hey, me too, I'm having that issue as well. You can get some understanding about the scale and then prioritize effectively where you rank those items as well. So if you click on these items, they take you into some more granular detail, and that's when you can start to see some of the cool features within Tide. So this one's been closed, but I'll just use this as an example. This is the description that's been filled out by the technicians when they first submitted the item, and also any attachments if there are any, and then the closure comments. But what people can do is come and view any of the contact details at any particular time. People can come and follow the item. So if there's a particular item that they want to receive updates in, and we also generate these updates in Teams as well as email as it progresses throughout the life cycle. So if it gets closed off, all those people that opted in to follow the item will get an email generated to them. You can also view the comments here from this point as well. You can add a comment. So anybody from around the business can add a comment or attachments, and that's handy to get some screenshots if it's a specific systems issue. You can also put your hand up, or you can share amongst anybody throughout the business. So if there's links all back into Azure Active Directory, so anybody throughout the business you can add and then share, and then they'll be engaged through a Teams notification and also an email. So that's just a quick rundown of Tide. That's the very first Power App that we created, and this isn't obviously what it looked like when we first rolled it out, but it gives you some understanding of where you can go from your very first MVP up to something that really does make an impact with our business as well.
Hey, Nathan, Cassie, real quick, we had a great question come in, because I know, if I remember correctly, and you'll cover this in a bit, is you had over half of the field techs kind of go use this stuff on day one, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you have any issues scaling or with performance around the application?
Yeah, so when it comes to performance, pretty much a lot of it comes down to how the app's built, I guess you'd say, not generally with the platform. The platform itself seems to be all right, although I have seen some marked improvements from when I first started developing a couple of years ago to now. It's the improvement on the platform itself is a lot better, especially in the developer view itself. But when it comes down to app performance, a lot of it comes down to how it's actually, I won't say coded because that's not really the correct term for a citizen developer app, but the way that the formulas and the syntaxes and whatnot in the background are all formulated, I guess you'd say. So the very first MVP of Tide, we built that in pretty much the very first Power App that I created. It was very, when I went back and had a look at the code like two years later, it's kind of like, oh, why did I do that? Why did I do this when I could do it this way? There's sort of 20 different ways you can achieve the same outcome. One's the most efficient, and there's the 20th most efficient way. And it seemed in the first instance we done it the 20th most efficient way, where now we sort of we've built it so it's all up there as good as we can get it. But yeah, like I said, we have around 1,000 users per day that use these apps now, and we don't really have too many issues with performance at all. A lot of it comes down to how it's built.
That's awesome. So basically taking the time to make sure you got a solid MVP that's, you know, built in the most efficient way.
Yeah, it's all of a learning curve as well. I mean, it's a relatively new product, only a few years old. We sort of come into the journey, I guess, as early adopters. The way we were doing things when we first started is a lot different to how we're doing it now. It's just a progression and learning journey. And where we're at now, our apps and the performance that they achieve is a lot better than what it was when we first started. And I think this comes down to the knowledge. But I guess that's the great thing about being a citizen developer is you learn along the way, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
So the next one I'll kick across into is the Technician Plus application. So this is one I was talking about before. This is essentially the only application that we have now on Teams for our field technicians. This is the central landing page for all things that our technicians access on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing that you'll notice when you log on to Technician Plus is we have some comms that first pop up. So these are updated by our comms specialists from around our business. And this is so we can get communication updates out to our technicians as fast as possible. So if it's updated in the back end, pretty much instantaneously, it'll be available in Technician Plus. And our technicians can then scroll through and view any of the most recent changes, or they can skip and then they'll land on the home page. So this is the home page of Technician Plus. We have our most popular apps and tools here. So as I mentioned before, this is a consolidation of everything that we've built into the one app. We've also got integration with the location of the current device that the technician's using. So if they're using their tablet or a desktop which has location enabled, they'll be able to see some weather updates for their current location, any weather warnings as well down the bottom here. And if they click on that link, it'll kick across to the Bureau of Meteorology website for Australia. We also have any news items which are relevant for telco as well in here. And one that we've added since the most recent bushfire crisis, I guess you'd call it, in Australia is a live feed to the state authorities' fire warning service. So thankfully we don't have any emergency or watch and act fire alerts in here at the moment, but what users can do is come in here and view any of the fire alerts which are available from that particular states that they're currently located in emergency service, and also click on the link here which will take them across to that site where they can get that map view and work out if there's any fires which will be within their area.
So you guys have made some amazing updates to this, even since the last couple of months when you first showed us. Unfortunately, you had to make that last one, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think that goes back to your point earlier, right? Is you get to that MVP and then you start to build that out as needs progress or change or evolve.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little like even in the last couple of months, what Technician Plus looked like when we demonstrated it Ignite in Orlando to what it is now, and that was only 3 months ago. It's completely changed, and I guess that's probably the beauty of using this as a development platform is how quick it is and how easy it is to make updates and change the UI and things like that. So here we have. In the interest of time, I'll try and go quickly through this, but we have the integration with a Power BI report, which contextually brings in the performance of that CT. When I say CT, I mean communications technician, which is our field technicians. So our field technicians will have their current performance financial year to date displayed on the homepage. Or if we wanted to come in and view all the apps, these are all the separate apps and functionality and tools and processes that I mentioned before, which our technicians can access directly from this page, and they can also search throughout it. So if I just wanted to have a look at our communications collection in particular, we can then click on that and it'll take us straight across to where we store all of our communications. So these are all stored in the SharePoint document library. We interface them within the app. It goes all the way back to 2015. If there's a particular document a technician would like to view, we can go and view that document in here and then bring that document natively within the app as well, which is great for knowledge management. And we can then search throughout the app, throughout the document itself for any keywords as well. And I'll take you to that space. We also have a collection of our team briefs. So once a month we have a team brief where they can come and download that pack directly. This was all sent out via email previously. So another great win. We have some podcasts which have been recorded by various senior leaders from around the business, which our technicians can come and play natively within the app. And something that I find really cool as well is our videos tab. So for any information or instructional videos, our technicians can come in here and if they get stuck on a task or they don't know how to do something, they can view these natively within the app as well. And we're currently in the process of converting these all across from SharePoint into Stream, because that connect is now being made available. A great one for any business as well, and something that's helped drive upsell opportunity in Telstra is our fee-for-service rate cards. This is essentially an interactive catalogue of products and services that we can offer our customers while we're on site. So if we have a look here at our Telstra TV3, it gives the customer some understanding of how much it's going to cost, and then gives a rundown of the product features, what the price is, any photos associated with that product, and they can view any promotional videos or instructional videos within the app as well, within Teams as well.
This is awesome. Are you guys using, out of curiosity, maybe, and forgive me if this is an inappropriate question, but are you guys using that as an upsell opportunity? I'd see that as a great use case to educate your field teams to almost enable a new sales arm to your business.
Yeah, 100%. We're actually in the process of developing functionality in there at the moment to submit lead referrals back to our front house team to follow up. So if it's products that our technicians necessarily can't offer while they're on site, like a mobile plan upgrade or a new mobile or something like that, that they wouldn't typically carry in their vans, they can submit a lead referral into our front of house teams, who will then contact the customer to say, hey, our technicians indicated that you're interested in a mobile upgrade. These are your options. And then we can also incentivize that for our technicians by giving them, vouchers or points or whatever that they can redeem as vouchers based on how many lead referrals they submit. This is this Telstra Plus enrollment, which is disabled at the moment, but you can see it's coming soon.
That's awesome.
So I'll quickly just cut through some of these. This is just so our technicians can submit overtime. So they can also look up their network access booking codes as well. So if a technician has worked overtime, let's say on Saturday for X amount of hours, they can then come in here and then submit all this information and collect this information. And once they're done, it sends off an approval email to the manager, which can then go and approve it, and then it automatically updates in our system so our technicians can manage their overtime directly from within Teams as well. We have our performance, so similar to that very front page that I've seen before that had a snapshot of the financial year-to-date performance. This is some more granular information about how they've done for last week. I don't really have, just have some test stats in here at the moment. There's historical items in here as well, how long you've been doing for the last sort of 6 months. And then also another one which helps drive or coaches our technicians is what the customer advocacy score is. So if there's a technician that's been out on site at the end of the job, our customers will get a link on their mobile to say that there's been some work that's been done. How did you rate your experience? And our technicians will then feed this data into this Power BI report, which we display in Teams for them to see, and they can see how they've gone, and obviously their managers can coach them based on that feedback.
And Nathan, do your technicians ever even have to leave this app to get their work done? I mean, it feels like you could probably get a huge percentage of their job done just in one single place, which, I mean, that's kind of most organizations' ultimate goal, right? It's pretty amazing what you guys have done.
Yeah, pretty much we try to keep everything in here that isn't. So we have another system which we use for our ticketed work management. So how our technicians get jobs, how they write off the jobs and things like that. So apart from that, we have another chatbot as well. And then we also have Technician Plus. So they're sort of the three main tools that are used by our technicians now, where before, like I said, there was 50 separate tools in different places. And we've just sort of brought it all back into either Technician Plus, into Promise, which is their ticketed work management system, or they can reach some of our back of house teams using the chatbot as well.
Awesome. Hey, quick one on this. Do you know if the Power App you used was the Canvas app or the model driven?
This is all Canvas, so this was all done on our P0 license. None of this that you're seeing now has cost us any more in regards to licensing or anything like that. So this is all Canvas-based apps that you're seeing now. Or this Technician Plus is a Canvas-based app. Yep.
Yeah, we've had 3 questions on the licensing component there, so that was a big one. Appreciate you addressing that.
Yeah, I think we have a section in that in the next part of the presentation, but we'll touch on it a bit then. But yeah, that's pretty much the crux of it. So something as simple like just to give you a perfect example of how this can be a great tool for our technicians is that this used to be a spreadsheet which would provide to our technicians where they can find where particular exchange or network sites are around the country. Now we can bring in all of those network sites which are in a particular radius of their current location. You can see all the exchanges close to me here, or you can search for any exchange within a particular or across the entire country really, and then we have that integration to be able to navigate to that particular place using Google Maps as well. And if you're on your device, it'll open up the Google Maps map. And something that's so simple was just takes out that manual guesswork, I guess, that going through the spreadsheet, having to filter and find that particular item. And the last one I'll show you, this is kind of a real fun one for us. For those people that aren't in Australia, we have two major football codes, NRL, which is rugby, and then AFL, which is more predominant down in Victoria. But this is just something that you can help build the engagement and also the usage of your tools by adding something as cool as a tipping application. So we offered some great tips and prizes for our technicians to come in here and then participate in what's called a tipping competition, essentially. It's all obviously free to play. It's more just around that engagement piece and obviously bring out the competitive side and have something to talk about other than work. So I think this is a great example of, you might say, what's this relevant to work? That's kind of what we didn't want to do. We didn't want to make this all about work. We wanted to keep it a little bit fun and give people incentive to come in here. And this is going to be released before the end of the month, which is when the season starts for both of these codes. So this is just an example of something a little bit different you can create pretty quickly.
That's great, though. It humanizes it, right? I mean, we actually see a lot of customers talking about this just in the general context of team and frankly, all really good chat-based and collaboration solutions that they use is that, even GIFs and all these things that bring about this culture and this personality, if you will, are really important to having success on this adoption and rollout.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man. That was absolutely brilliant. I would imagine, because we're already starting to get some questions on this, if you don't mind, I might go back to those slides real quick. And
yep.
I know most of the time what we'll get asked at this point is around, how exactly did you make this happen? Just from, I don't want to necessarily call it architecture in this case, but that's a question that comes up quite a bit. So maybe you could walk us through the phases you went through real quick. I know we kind of touched on them earlier, but the reality is we all know this stuff doesn't happen overnight, right? and how you got there, I think, is really important in terms of that evolution and story.
Yeah. So pretty much how this all started is, we had that very first power app called Tide. What we use for our central data storage for Tide was SharePoint. It's available free under our enterprise license agreement. Because of the stage where we're at now, we're kind of at the point where we've almost hit the ceiling of what we can do in Canvas app. So we're starting up a new initiative to be able to sort of move across CDS and get the licensing and funding for that, and also make these tools a lot more scalable as well. Depending on what the tool is within Technician Plus, will depend on where we've stored the data or how we access it. But yeah, as you mentioned before, a lot of the questions around CDS and Canvas apps at the moment, it's all Canvas, which means a hell of a lot more work for us to be able to achieve what we need. I mean, people in our business call us the king of workarounds because we have to go, to X, Y, Z to try and get the job done, rather than if we just had CDS go from point A to point B. But I think this is a great example of what you can do, even if you don't necessarily have those elevated licenses and privileges.
But I assume you did that because you wanted to build that MVP first, right? And test it out. Well, you could do that essentially for free, right? Or leveraging your existing tools. And then when ready to really scale, you can, and correct me if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly, but when you're ready to really scale, then you can leverage the licenses that you might need at that point.
Yeah, 100%. And it also comes down to just the basic knowledge or the governance you have around what should be a Power App solution or a team solution versus what should be a DevOps solution. So there's obviously guardrails that we have, the amount of data, where it's stored, which systems can connect to. There's certain things that we wouldn't even attempt to try and do in Technician Plus. But I guess that all comes down to how you operate within your company and where this data is stored. And there's a whole bunch of variables that are associated with that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Then let me move on here. Sorry, just pull the screen off. So impact of the solution. And this is going to cover quite a few questions that we already had. So thanks for those of you who have been patient. But I always think it's really important to talk about, that obviously I think we all saw that and that it was valuable. But you've had some pretty incredible tangible impacts that have happened at Telstra as a result of what you guys have done. So would love to have you share those.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we sort of the very first day that we introduced this into our field technicians, we had over half of our thousands of technicians jump in to check it out, and we sort of track around 1,000 unique users per day now. So around 20% of our users jump on a day-to-day basis to check out some of this stuff. We obviously embedded this within Teams, which then, as I mentioned before, our comms and change strategy now isn't always, pumping out emails to say, go to this link, go to this place to find this. It's pretty much consistently go to Technician Plus, go to Teams. Your comms will be in there, your change will be in there. You'll be able to find the link within there. So it's really helped when it comes to the change management perspective, because our technicians were quite frank with what they told us. They said that, it's great that you're building all of these applications. We've now got 50 applications developed in a couple of years that we can use, but it's you're kind of going too fast for us. We need to bring it back. We need to have it in the one place where we can just all go to, and that's where the whole idea of Technician Plus came around. So I think that's helped.
Can I just, that one real quick, to me is a game changer, right? For those of us who are seen as subject matter experts, so to speak, in our organizations, it can become exhausting just answering the same questions over and over and over again. And when our folks complain about announcements getting lost and where do I go find this, that sounds small maybe, but I think it's a profound impact that you guys have had right there. As much as that's probably not the one that jumps out to most people on the screen,
Yeah, comms is definitely up there. That's what I think it's probably redefined the most throughout our business, is our comms strategy. Just having this one platform or place to go for our technicians. And we've got Teams channels, which we regularly have. We have senior leaders from around our business all the way up to our executive for field services who jumps on to these chats, and we'll just ask our technicians, for some feedback regarding tools or processes and things like that. That's all facilitated in Teams channels. So what that's done is help flatten our hierarchy as well. And that was kind of unexpected. We've obviously had Skype for Business previously with this, which didn't sort of offer that top-down view or that forum, I guess, where you can have thousands of people in the one channel, the one chat. And what we've done is set up what's called the Technician Brains Trust. So around 100 technicians from around the entire country. That's probably more technically inclined than, or the most technically inclined technicians, to gather feedback about these tools, get suggestions from them. And that's sort of our user feedback group as well, which is all within Teams. To help drive the direction of our products as well that we're developing.
Awesome.
Some of the other tools that we've built on here as well. Some of the inspection tools. We've got Sherlock, which is for capturing damages. So we capture roughly $20 million worth of recovered damages through that tool, which has been developed on Power Apps as well. So that's quite a substantial amount of cost coming back into our business. A great example of what we've been able to do in 24 to 48 hours was after the most recent bushfire crisis, we developed an application to conduct site inspections of those sites which were in those fire impacted areas. And what that does is give us visibility around whether sites are firstly safe to enter for our technicians going out and attending, but then also to coordinate our recovery efforts as well. So to be able to drive a permanent and or temporary resolution in some cases, depending on whether the site's been destroyed or damaged. And that's meant that we've been able to get our customers connected quicker than we ever have before, going through emails and trying to collate all this data and get them across to the relevant team to go out and fix as well. So I think that's been a great homage to the tool as well.
And Nathan, so summarizing this whole page, right? You guys did this, not counting the resource hours spent on this, but in terms of cost financially, cost you guys $0. Correct me if I'm wrong. You've now got one place technicians know to go. You've, as you put, flattened this hierarchy, but you've got this better engagement between your field technicians and your senior leadership team, as well as your back of the house experts. And you've captured $20 million worth of recovered damages. My question that I have, summarizing that all up, and I think this is really important for everybody on the call to hear, because it's easy to jump into the cost of licensing and all these other things. Is there any chance you guys are going to have a challenge scaling this and getting the support internally based on the impact you've already had with this free solution?
Yeah,
and be honest with me, right? If you do.
Yeah, 100%. We're at that point now where we've got all this stuff that we've developed. We're obviously quite mature with what we're doing on the Canvas apps and without using CDS, but we're kind of at the ceiling of that at the moment. And the unique thing about our team developing this kind of stuff is the most guys fit scenarios that would be developing this stuff around the business we don't actually have access to that tenant admin. So we're not able to influence any of the connectors that are available in Canvas apps. We're not able to create new environments. We're not able to, set up a center of excellence. So that's all managed by our internal IT teams. And when it comes out to scaling their tools, it's kind of like we need to go to and beg for forgiveness for them teams to be able to unlock some of this functionality. So the problem with the way that we've set it up in our company is that we've already got all these applications that have been developed on a default environment. Now we're in the process where IT is trying to implement a center of excellence, but really the center of excellence should be before any of this kind of stuff's developed. So at the moment, it's kind of difficult for us when we publish an application. It just goes into the bucket of default applications across the entire company of Telstra. That means that with 80% of the applications that are in there are all called test. So for our technicians to actually find these applications makes it more difficult. So I think that if there's other people on the call that are looking to adopt Power Apps or teams across their businesses, make sure that you have real solid and governance and support at the start. Proactively go and enable this functionality for your citizen developers, and don't just make it another IT team where people have to go and put their hand out and they ask for NWA codes and money to, 50 grand to go and unlock this connector and that. Try and be as proactive as possible, identify the opportunities and the user stories to unlock this capability before a citizen developer has to try and, do it on their own bat or fund it from their own business unit. And I guess that's been the disadvantage from our point of view, is that we've been the early adopters of this technology, which means that if we want to get anything unlocked for our field services technicians, we need to fund it. So that relatively cheap operation that we had, where it's not costing us any any capex, sort of quickly can turn around once you want to start moving to that CDS phase and getting these connectors unlocked that makes these tools more scalable. So that's currently where it's all at the moment, is we're developing this new team to try and push this with our IT teams to make these tools more scalable, get access to that admin, create our own environment, have a test or a sandbox environment.
There's a bunch of great questions on here. I want to be conscious of your time. Do you have a couple extra minutes, or do we need to cut off here in the next 2 minutes at 45?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's
I appreciate that. So one that's a great question, which touches on exactly where you were just going. So you said, you guys are at the point where you want to be able to take this to scale. When you look at the Canvas app, someone asked a great question on what limitations does it have that are keeping you from getting to that point on scaling and the need to move to CDS, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so pretty much majority of our data at the moment is stored on SharePoint, and there's limitations with how you actually code your apps. There's delegation that you need to code it back to be able to be delegatable amongst SharePoint as well. So the complexity when it comes around how you actually build these apps is a lot greater if you're trying to do it or using SharePoint as your central data repository. We sort of wouldn't take on anything at the moment with more than, say, 100,000 records. But what we want to do is obviously firstly get that SQL connector unlocked, but then that's where it comes back down to the astronomical cost that our IT teams would like to get that go through the security process and get that unlocked. So really, we would love to start moving to things like Azure and cloud-based data storage, which CDS provides, but at the moment, most of it's stored on SharePoint. We sort of know what the limitations are in regards to how much data we can take on. So anything at, say, over 100,000 rows, I wouldn't try and bother with, because then performance would be impacted. So there is, I guess, a sense of governance that we've set up amongst our own team to be able to know what we should take on board versus what should be a DevOps solution. But now we're at the point, like I've mentioned before, where we want to scale this out. We want to get that CDS, and that's sort of where we're at as a company now, from field services, is trying to get this unlocked so the rest of our business can enjoy the benefits as well.
Yeah, awesome. Couple other quick ones on here, and it's a great answer. Thanks for summarizing that there. So you probably just answered it here, but the other question was, why choose Power Apps instead of a bespoke, scalable Azure web app? And I think it's because you were, to your point there, you were, connecting into SharePoint into SQL Server, yeah? originally?
Yeah, and also this is probably more focused at citizen developers as well. So people, I guess, depending on what the back end development platform looks like. So this is pretty easy for anybody to sort of pick up. As you touched on at the start, I was a technician with no formal sort of software engineering or DevOps training. So for somebody to come in and start using these tools from a citizen developer's perspective is quite easy. And I think that's sort of touching on the last point as well. That's where you need to make sure that this doesn't, you know, a Power Apps a solution or a Power Apps team or a Power Apps operation doesn't turn into just another typical IT team, because it's not that. It's not the way that the product's being developed. Although that there is, you know, some great functionality there for full-scale DevOps developers in the component space and things like that as well, where you can go and upload Java to be able to build a component which can be used in Power Apps. But just talking from a citizen developer's perspective, just to make it as simple and as easy just for your layperson who has a problem amongst their own business unit to go out and proactively solve their own problems, I think is the great benefit of this tool that shouldn't be messed with, really.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Let's see, last one I got on here, if I will. Actually, you kind of touched on this one, so I'm going to leave it on the governance. Someone did ask about the deck, and this will be recorded, so I'll post that out online. But Nathan, this has been amazing, dude. Really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. Your honesty, your transparency around this. I mean, it's killer, because it's probably more than you know, it's addressing a lot of the concerns that other organizations out there are having around, you know, how do you even start? What are the licensing implications? You know, governance and all these other things. And in my mind, listening to you, it was, you know, you guys have almost created sort of a center of excellence there, right? I hate to use that term, but I mean, it's a very popular one right now, where you've got somebody who's got the experience and sits in between IT and the business, so to speak, who understands the challenges of the end users. And you're dangerous enough with technology, right? You're not a developer, but you're dangerous enough where you can go in and do these things, and you've got the passion and the desire to do it because you get it, right? You got empathy for the folks, and you've proven that successful, and now you guys are moving to the next stage. So looking forward to working with you guys on that one for sure, and really appreciate the time on all this.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thanks for everybody's time. It's been a pleasure.
For sure. Hey, real quick for everybody too, if this is your first time joining in, just last thing here is we started a Teams team for customers, which is sitting in our Microsoft tenant, where we'll post these videos and we'll keep the conversation going. So if Nathan's kind enough to join in there, we'd be happy to have you, Nathan. And so if you're already in our tenant, that's the code to join. If you want to join the team and you're not in our tenant, just shoot me an email right there and I'll add you to it. And then we will post this online on our YouTube playlist. So you're going to be able to save this call and share the link out with anybody if you'd like, but we'll also have this up on YouTube, and we'll share these out just to address the person that had the question around the slides going out afterwards. But with that, can't thank you enough, Nathan. I will make sure that we get to the questions that haven't fully been answered on the Q&A, so stay tuned. I'll get to those here in one sec. But thank you again, brother. Really appreciate your time.
All good. No worries. Thank you.
All right. Take care.